I think it's a really interesting story around growth and optimism and how that came out in the CEO survey. When I step back and I look at the numbers, CEOs are optimistic about their company's growth, both at a global level and at a Canadian level. About 85% of CEOs said their organizations were going to grow in the short term, i.e. over the next 12 months. And over 3 years, everybody thought their organizations were going to grow. So that's really a good news story. The interesting thing, though, is when they think of the global economy, only a third of Canadian CEOs think it's going to grow. So is there a disconnect there? I think that's the interesting question. I think there are some fundamental areas of concern, and that's probably where the disconnect comes in between the macroeconomy and what my business is going to do. And for me, there are probably 3 areas that are highlighted. First of all, protectionism. And I'm sure that's not a surprise to anyone at all. Think of it, Brexit, Trump election. Everybody is worried about economies now, governments now thinking about themselves rather than the global economy and what's that impact on their businesses. If you add to that China and their view of moving away from an export-driven economy to a consumer-led economy, that has impacts on many other businesses. And third of all, the Eurozone. High debt, immigration, societal issues, all of those things are playing together to, I think, significantly dampen optimism for the economy as a whole. It's not just about those macro issues, it's also about the disruption that's happening, the pace and speed of change in technology and how that's impacting their businesses. Canadian CEOs are looking to grow over the next year back to the same old spot, the US. 80% of CEOs say that's where the major growth thrust will be. Now, it's fair to say 40% are still looking at China, but when I think about it, that's a problem for us. We need to diversify, we need to look broader, but I think what's driving that is global GDP growth is going to be dampened from about 3.5% over the last decade to 2.5%. And today, the US economy is doing well, so Canadian CEOs are looking at that, seeing the opportunity. We understand the American business better, it's less risky, and we're going back to our old stomping ground. That, for the long term, though, is not the best thing for our Canadian economy. Now, how are Canadian CEOs going to get that growth? It's interesting. A lot more than their global counterparts through strategic alliances, through joint ventures, through partnering with startups, and looking at new businesses. I think there's a real recognition that the talent within our organizations today is not going to get us to where we need to go. Digitization is an area that CEOs look at and think about every day. But the interesting part of that is they're not focusing their time and attention on changing the talent mix within their organizations to actually get ready for that future. And when we compare it to the survey results of their global counterparts, there's less focus in Canada on bringing in talent with innovation and with technology skills than you'd expect when companies truly believe that their business models are going to dramatically change over the next 5 years. Canadian CEOs today are telling us that soft skills are critical. Leadership, creativity, and are far less focused on bringing in those technical, digital type skills and STEM skills. And for me, that's a bit of a surprise. You know, it's interesting because I think one of the blind spots that's out there is we're not focused enough as a Canadian culture, a Canadian business community around the impact that these technological changes are going to have on customer behaviors.